Hi, everyone, and welcome to Tech Trends. I am Cam Srikanth, a product manager here at AlertOps, joined by my co-host Gene, co-founder of Traceless. Today's episode is a special one. It's our first one. We're taking a deep dive into Cyft.ai, a solution that's making waves in the MSP space.
Cam, it's good to be back. I hope you had a good holiday. Everything good on your end?
No complaints. Quiet Christmas, quiet New Year's, so pretty happy there.
Great, man. Well, let's get right to the industry pulse before we dig into SIFT.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in the last few weeks, there's been a few major movements. I know that obviously one of the big ones is that Fred Vicola is stepping down as CEO of Kaseya. So I think everyone has had an opinion in terms of how that's really impacting the industry going forward. Gene, what are your thoughts, right? What do you think really this means for the MSP industry moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think sales strategy is pretty clear at this point, so I'm not sure it'll mean much of anything of a difference. I mean, look, from my perspective, he's been there for 10 years as CEO. I mean, it sounds like he should do whatever he wants to do in his life. I mean, just even thinking about him personally, like he did a lot at that company, and it's very different from where he started, and maybe now's a good time to introduce new leadership.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that at 1.5 billion in annually recurring revenue, realistically, an IPO seems like what they're going to be looking forward to. So it seems like an appropriate time there.
Yeah, could very well be, but who knows? Jeff, as we talked in our last conversation about private equity, maybe they'll keep it private. Who knows?
Yeah. It will be interesting to watch what unfolds, that's for sure.
Yeah. And in a smaller way, smaller vendors, Citricom acquired Televi. They announced that at seven-figure MSP this week in California. So I think it's interesting to see. There's another thing Jeff and I talked about was like consolidation of like coupling of platforms, and it seems like we have some smaller players coming together to increase their value and opportunity to sell into MSPs.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, I think that realistically, it definitely pushes Citricom's envelope a little bit in terms of what they can offer in terms of value with respect to MSPs. Enhancing your security portfolio is obvious, right? I think in today's realm for vendors, that's going to be a pretty basic move that they take. That's a no-brainer. So with their kind of attack surface management and data secure posture management, definitely I think that this union could be beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. So, look, Cam, we talked a lot about what we thought 2025 was going to be about, and I'm really excited that we have Sift in the room. They are both in the side of AI, right? And efficiency, cost savings, productivity gains, right? And this was on our list of top tech trends for this year. So maybe we should bring in Jeff or Jeffrey, as you prefer, into the room to talk a little bit about Sift.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for being on, Jeffrey.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. No problem. Thanks for having me on, guys. Yeah, so we really do hit all of those topics you just had said, Gene. We don't really look at it as like the AI company. We have it in the name and we have it in the domain, right? But it's really more about empowering and enabling the people to be able to elevate to that highest and best use time, right? We talked even before we started like the context switching and the context in general. We believe that the vast majority of the context within an MSP is actually being lost just on the daily, right? It never actually makes it to the system of record, whether it's your PSA or your documentation or all the things that you're fighting against all the time. And so we sought out to create a better reality for MSPs, born out of MSP. I spent 18 years in 5 different MSPs in my time prior to joining as co-founder, and the way in which we're attacking that surface is by unlocking voice as an interface, and then from that capturing the context that's happening in the business, whether that be account managers on calls with clients or service managers meeting internally or salespeople meeting with prospects. We're actually sucking up all that context for you without you changing your behavior, and then layering agentic processing on top of it, right, to bring the personas and the disciplines and the skill sets to listen for different things in those conversations, and then automatically structure that information and get it into all the right places in the PSA without having to fight the keyboard or the mouse to do it.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, especially considering you're kind of bringing a new paradigm to MSPs, right? It's an inefficiency and a problem that they're not addressing because they didn't know
Yeah.
it exists, right? So from that perspective, In your processes of trying to educate the market, hey, yeah, this is a problem that you're facing and you don't even know it, right? How do you convince MSPs to care, right? How do you convince MSPs that this is something important that you have to integrate to be forward in a mature MSP?
Yeah, it's a great question, and the problem seems bigger than it really is. And I'll just give the answer from my own personal experience. Once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. And so once people see it happen, because you also hit on something very important, like MSP market by and large is actually unaware that the problem exists. And it's not so much that they're unaware, they're totally desensitized to it, right? Like every MSP owner out there is still mostly carrying the club around, telling people to submit their timesheets by 10 o'clock every Monday morning. And like maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't. Even the highest functioning, like highest operationally functioning ones, they may get the things submitted on time, but you're sort of discounting the fact that like the context is being lost. Even though you're getting some billable hours and your utilization's fine and you have like enough entries, right? But you're not like getting the full value out of the context of those conversations. And so the first time I saw it was when I was consulting with the team. And at that point, it was voice to CRM for the PSA. And to just be able to speak, like I was at a trade show type of a thing and just like, hey, just met with Cam and they want to move forward in Q4, not in Q3. So update that. And by the way, there you got 10 more users. So boom, and it's done. And like the opportunity manager was created, activity to follow up was moved, and it just sort of happened. And so I like to say that the MSPs have sort of accepted good enough for way too long that they sort of got used to meh, that they forgot what WoW feels like. But when they see it work and they feel it work for the very first time, it sort of does all the heavy lifting of the convincing, because it just sort of breaks down the barriers that we put up with for so long from the big guys that built systems that don't really meet us where we are.
So, Jeffrey, what were some of your top integrations? So it seemed like it's fun because I haven't really done a lot of research, even though
Yeah.
we've talked a lot and hung out at IT Nation last year.
Mm-hmm.
I thought you were just pure play, like hooking into manage. Tell me about like that's not the case and why that matters.
Yeah. So today that's the case. Like as of recording this episode, manage is the thing we're tapped into. On the roadmap yet for 2025, although I almost don't even say that word because all of us are so calloused by that word for most vendors in the space. But we will be opening up additional PSAs to basically execute the same Cyft functions. But we're really talking about context, right? So like the most important piece of context is, yes, we need the ticketing system, but we also need the documentation system. So targeting things like IT Glue and Hoodoo. And that way, at the point of origin, when the ticket comes in for Acme Corporation and, John Doe, we can actually say, okay, John Doe's got a QuickBooks ticket coming in. Well, at the same time, we could go out and pull in the information from IT Glue on Acme Corp's QuickBooks server, whatever we need to, and then contextualize it and even bring forward hey, based on the 17 other tickets from the last 93 days, this is how we've resolved the ticket for Acme Corp. And so we can pre-seed and pre-feed that information and context to your tech before they start working, hopefully making that time work quicker. But then we'll also be sort of riding shotgun with them while they're actually working with the end user. Again, recording and capturing what's actually happening between them. And now you're talking about a whole treasure trove of context that you never would have had before, whether that be like high stress words that we can pick up in sentiment, or they casually mention they're moving offices in 4 weeks, but no one knows about that and you don't have a project already open for it. So like just that whole I like to refer to it as almost like this omnipotence and omnipresence, and really bringing a service first approach to the service company, right? Like the hospitality thing, we like to think of it as like anticipating your needs rather than just showing up, more like the SNL IT guy and saying move and throwing you out of the way.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. I think when I hear omnipotence, as scary as it sounds, right? That's the
Yeah.
world we're living in, right? Hell, I have an Alexa in every room, for better or for worse. And I think that it is important, right, for sales calls and business development discovery processes to be able to pick up on some of the minutia that we otherwise are going to ignore, right?
Yeah.
Quite frankly, we go in with a particular agenda to cover certain action items, certain tasks, and we're not necessarily focusing on the tone or the couple of words that they threw in their last sentence, and having someone there or something there to be able to identify the additional opportunities is definitely a value add. So on top of that, right, I think that something like Cyft.ai definitely poses a lot of benefit in day-to-day operations. Now, as an MSP, how do you try to define the ROI to an MSP, right? How do I perceive the ROI from something like Cyft?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And we've, again, coming from MSP, the first thing that I usually torch and crucify is an ROI calculator because the vendors traditionally manipulate the numbers, right? But the reality is, from what we've seen with the early adopting customers, is that the traditional time entry done the ConnectWise way, right? Keyboard, mouse, clicking 1,000 times and like not putting it all in there takes anywhere about 7 to 10 minutes. If you really sit down and think about the thinking that went in, the typing that went in, the time and the figuring it out, the copy and the pasting of the notes, and then worrying about how it's going to be sent out in his email. We were measuring that at about 7 to 10 minutes. It's 60 seconds or less when you literally just brain dump it, 4-letter words and all. We'll clean it up, we structure it, we reprocess it through a hospitality filter. So the service managers don't get those angry client calls anymore that, Jimmy's great, he solves my problem, but man, he's an ass. That goes away too. And so we can quantify the time savings alone on just the administrative work. And then if we compound that out by the amount of people that you have and the roles that you have, that part's pretty black and white. And usually we'll ask questions of, the one-to-one customer so that we're not overgeneralizing. But in general, it takes the fastest an MSP has integrated the product into their business is 10 minutes and 6 seconds. And the time to value per technician is a day and a half based off the admin time savings. So for your average MSP that's about 10 employees, we're seeing on average you'd get about 1 FTE's worth of admin time back just out of that sort of cost savings and like speed and efficiency. Because it's not only just the time to get the data in, like now you have muscle memory and speed of uniformity when the data comes out, but also if I needed to go jump in and look at a ticket, everything's structured the same way. The information's in the same spot. And you get that like smooth as fast kind of a reality as well once things become a little bit more uniform across the org.
Yeah, definitely that one full-time employee, that's huge.
Yeah, and it's just in your hours, and it's like I literally sat for about a day and a half doing nothing more than trying to break the ROI calculator that we built through the lens of like, I don't want to game the system. I want this thing to be real. And so we spliced it a million different ways, but at the end of the day, it was like the one most controllable thing, although some MSPs may argue it's not controllable, but the most controllable number you have to drive profit to the bottom line is margin, right? All service GM, generally all services GM. And so like, that's really the way that I wanted to meet people where they were as they were trying to make the decision too, right? It's like, where can we cut out the dead air, so to speak, the admin time, the burden, and the psychological burden for these techs? Like, the last thing your techs want to do is fill out a timesheet. They want to move to the next ticket and help the next person. So let's let them do that, right? That's one of the ways that we look at AI too, is like, it's not about the AI. It's about the people and letting the people do the things that people really want to do. And then we take care of the pieces that kind of stand in the way of that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Have you had any, or how do you think about concerns of the AI doing something that maybe people didn't mean?
Yeah.
Right. So I think the hospitality filter would be like that's an interesting lens. We were talking about this also earlier, right? The difference between hospitality and service, right? It's like making people feel good and adopting a tone, right? But gosh, it'd be bad if somebody was like, even in a nice way, said, yeah, thanks for your time today. I deleted your email account. That should solve your problem. Sincerely, the tech at the MSP, right? Like,
Yeah.
how have you guys thought about preventing something like that happening?
Yeah.
For me, that's like a big AI concern about like chat bots and things doing and allowing stuff that they shouldn't.
Yeah, I think I'll answer it with 2 parts. The first part is we knew that would be a concern even just because AI is still so new, right? We haven't experienced it out in the wild, so to speak, enough to have like gained confidence as a user base or as an industry. So knowing that there was going to be some trepidation there, we intentionally designed our workflow, so the user experience, to keep the human in the middle. So the human actually gets to gut check everything that's going to go into manage before it goes. We call it speak it, review it, submit it, right? So you speak it to us. In this case, with the early version, it was like you speak it to us, we process it, we review it, we structure it. We give you one screen to say, did you want to create the ticket for this account, for this user, for this thing, with all the other criteria pre-lit? And then it'll show you as well, like, this is what we're going to put in the description. This is what we heard you say. And I can just spot check it. Am I good? Yep. Push it. And I'm done. So that's one way of doing it, was keeping the human in the middle of it intentionally. It doesn't have to be that way, but from a trust and a customization, it didn't slow anything down necessarily to do it that way. And
Yeah, so let me just repeat what I think I heard is like, so instead of spending that 7 to 8 minutes taking all the notes, putting what I didn't remember to put in before, right? You're saying, look, take 30 seconds and just read this and hit send.
correct. Yeah, and
Cool.
speak to it just like a coworker, right? Like natural language, broken, fragmented thoughts, the whole thing. We go through, the very first thing we do is we rip the dictation to a transcript, and then we organize it, we structure it, and contextualize it. We put it all sort of back into place, right? Because sometimes when you're talking through something, you forget about steps 1 through 3 until you've already talked about, you started at 4 and then you get to 7, you're like, oh crap, no, but I did this and this. So like we organize it first and then clean it up and then go look for the structured pieces and then validate it all with live API calls to manage, and then turn around and give you, the end user, the ability to review it. Is this what you intended? And then you push that button.
No, definitely. I mean, I think I'm not going to call out any names here. There's been definitely a couple of times where I have received automated communication that has clearly been copied and pasted from ChatGPT, because if it's signed 4.0, I know that you threw it into GPT and you copied and pasted it without any thought whatsoever, right?
Yeah.
And even if what you have to say there is amazing, that little sign immediately turns me off, because I think, okay, there hasn't been enough effort by anyone put in. So even something as simple as a manual review before hitting that send button or that final thumbs up, I think is critical, because that human touch, people buy from people, right? And I think that is critical.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing that I've often felt that many MSPs get wrong is, because we're tinkerers, we're professionals, but we're technical tacticians and technicians. We tend to think of ourselves as tech businesses or tech companies, right? But we're really not. We literally are called managed service providers, right? Like, we're professional service providers, which means we're a service company that happens to use technology to deliver the outcomes for the people we serve, but we're service companies. And especially even in the last 7 years, pre-AI, right? Pre-AI and pre-COVID, and then even post-COVID, but pre-AI, if you will. We got so interested and excited by layering additional tiny little efficiency tools, if you want to call them that, pieces of technology in between the people. And then we've just sort of been okay with it and thought we were doing everyone a favor. But by the time you've stacked all those layers of technology between the people, the experience has actually been diluted. Right? So much so that at the last MSP I was at before joining Cyft, was we had one focusing question before any company-wide decision was made that it had to pass, which was, how does this affect the client experience? Right? It might increase margin by X percentage. It might cut down ticket time by this number. It might do something else. It might have all these great things, but if it doesn't pass that one question, then we don't implement it. Because at the end of the day, it's about the end user experience. And I think we oftentimes forget that because we're so consumed behind the keyboard with the tech and in the technology and through the 17 dashboards and everything else, that it's just so easy to focus on what needs to be done more than who we're doing it for.
Interesting. And Jeff, when you're talking about such an incredible opportunity for MSPs, and we hope to reach an audience of MSPs and MSP focused consultants. I see on your website there's a wait list. Tell us more about someone hears this, they're like, okay, this is interesting. What do you need them to do? Where can they find you and find out more info?
Yeah, so for the company, it's going to be Cyft.ai. That's the website Gene's referring to. There is currently a wait list there. What that wait list is for is the transition between what I was describing as the speak it, review it, submit it version, just talking to Cyft and allowing it to push through. That's live, it's in production, it's available, we have MSPs on it, everything like that. We're in the process of releasing that live listening recorder. So you don't have to talk to us anymore. We're just going to be there riding shotgun with your team. That's what the waitlist is for. We're going to be onboarding MSPs into that program, essentially where we'll get you the recorder, get you activated, get through the provisioning process, and then pull in a couple of user discovery calls, let you use it, put it out in the wild, and then figure out, okay, now that you have all this context that you didn't know what to do with, Like, what else would you love to see this do? And we'll use it as some user discovery. So that's what that waitlist is for. If you're interested in following me specifically, then LinkedIn is really the only place you'll find me, Jeffrey Newton. You can either look up MSP Insider Show or Cyft.ai. I'll come up for either one of those.
Well, thank you so much, Jeffrey. I really appreciate it. I know that you, as our first guest, I was a little bit nervous coming into it, but I think that this has been an awesome experience and look forward to doing quite a few more of these. So best of luck with Cyft.ai, and I really appreciate everyone hopping in.
Yeah. Thanks, gentlemen.
Yeah. Hey, Jeff, before we go, one question for you. As you know, this show we really started because Cam and I were like very passionate. Well, we have a history of pitch it winners
Okay.
and hanging out after the show, you know, at a bar and stuff. So besides all that stuff, right? We really love the industry and all the tools that come out and um, seeing the change of the landscape, right? So outside of what you're passionate at Sift, obviously you guys think that these are very important things for our industry, which is why you're dedicating your full time and extra full time
Yeah.
to building this company. What are some of the other areas of the tools that you see that you think are going to be big for 2025?
That's a great question. I think that what we will see as a result of 2025 may not see it completely unfold in 2025, but I believe what we are going to see is the emergence of a lot more single point solutions, the decoupling of the sort of consolidation component, right? We're going to see more single point solutions addressing single incredibly important pain problems or pain points for people that then solve through the solution they bring to the table. As an MSP, one of the most frustrating things for me out of every vendor I interacted with at the time was by adopting their solution, I ended up with one or more additional problems, right? Maybe that was training, maybe it was onboarding, maybe it was integration, maybe it was all sorts of other things. But I had all these other problems that I didn't have before I had their magical solution. And I think that those days are gone. Like, I don't know that you can really treat the MSP community that way anymore. They've had enough, honestly. So if you continue to show up with solutions that you don't support all the way through, then, and that also happens when you start widening the scope of the solutions that are delivered. So I think a couple of things and a couple of reasons is that depth is really where it's going to be. And so the decoupling of certain services so that you can deliver a raving fan experience is what I would expect to see start to come out. Everything else will just sort of be probably wrapped up in AI wrappers for the most part in 2025. But if you go deep, you will win. That's what I think.
I mean, that's very interesting, right? I think that it makes perfect sense too. When vendors come out and say, hey, I'm the Swiss Army knife, well, it's great to have a screwdriver in your pocket, but when you're mounting your TV, you need a drill, right? That was
Yeah.
designed for the job.
Yeah.
So, yeah, absolutely.
I think the vendors need to look at the MSPs as a point of value and a point of value to pour into and not just extract from, right? Too many vendors have turned to the MSPs as simply a distribution channel with complete disregard for what it means for the MSP to adopt the solution. They just want your customers. They just want your dollars. You know, the PE-backed stuff is sort of a catalyst for a lot of that movement. And so I just think that the community as a whole is getting tired of that. And so the ones that come out alongside them, rather than trying to just see straight through them, are the ones that we'll see prevail, you know, through and beyond 2025. You know, kind of the way that you open the show, it'll be very interesting to continue to see what happens with the big guys, right? What's the next big moves? And there's some smaller people that are already, you know, mopping up contract expirations from the big ones. So just like almost sitting back and seeing some of that unfold is pretty interesting.
Well, I didn't see that coming, Cam. That was Jeff. Thanks. That was great.
Yeah, you bet.
All right. Well, I really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for hopping on. Thank you, Jeffrey, for joining us. And until the next one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, guys.